Today I'm sitting here in the cafe, Morning Glory Cafe on Main Street, and I'm here because this is the place where people come to eat, to socialize, to talk, to make decisions. And that's part of what we're going to talk about in today's show. It's the talking, it's the making decisions. We're in the cafe because essentially that's what the old farm table was for your grandparents, great-grandparents. It's what the community hall was, or the meeting hall, town hall was for our ancestors even back before that. And it's where people gathered to eat, to socialize, to talk, and to make decisions. So that's why we're starting here. I remember sitting on my grandfather's farm, grandmother and grandfather's farm, and all the farmers would come on Sunday afternoon and say, okay, tomorrow we're going to start working. Earl, you bring your combine. Tellis, you bring your baler. You bring 2 wagons. They'd get together. Okay, we know it takes a day and a half to do Earl's farm, and so we're going to do that. We'll start Monday. Tuesday afternoon, whenever we get done, we'll move on down to Tellis's. We'll start there. We'll move on to Carson's place after that. It's the way we made decisions. It's the way we governed the part of the world that we live in. Today's show is going to be about governance, governing the world. And we're going to look back to that. Where do we come from, town halls to cafes? So how do you make decisions for a city? We weren't there 100 years ago when the city was founded. We weren't there when we said, well, how do we do this? We're here now, and today's show is going to talk about that now. So I thought about, okay, what do I need to look at? Well, I went to the website for the city, and I can find little pictures for the mayor and our city council members, our city attorneys, some of the boards that we have in the city, Redevelopment Commission, Board of Zoning Appeals, maps. I went down to the mayor's office and got this nice wall map, little chart of where things are. This is really, I think, the best one. Nice little map that tells me what the city boundaries are. Always helps if you get it up, right side up. Tells me what streets are a part of the city, and this kind of gives me a what's the city. Some of the web links on the city website, you can find out demographics. How many people are there? Just under 15,000 at the last census in 2000. Tells me a little bit about demographics of the city, breakdown, government, medical institutions. Gives me a lot of good information. But it doesn't really tell me about governance. So here we are, back at the community center now. And for our second show, we wanted to look at aspects of city government. We started in the cafe because that's where most of us think about, discuss, and make our decisions about governance, what it ought to be, what it is. But today what we're going to do is bring in a couple of people to the show and talk about city governance, what it is, how it works, how it's done, where they make their decisions, and what are some of the decisions they need to make. Now for this segment, I asked one of our council members, Joe Prindle, to come on the show. He is one of our council members at large. And first I'd like to say, Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Butch. Nice to be here.
Good. And as I said, just a couple of simple, easy questions for an overview show. But what is the job of a city council person?
Well, city council person in Beech Grove, we're a Class 3 city, which means that our population is 35,000 or under. And by state law, we're allowed to have 5 districts and 2 council at large positions. And there's 5 districts, 1 through 5, and they're certain sections of the city. Council at large, their job is the entire city. So if you have a problem, you can go to your local councilman, or you can go to your council at large. You have 2 options. You have the 2 council at large and your city councilman. So you have 3 go-between people. If there's a problem, we can try to solve that.
Great. The basics of governance is different people to go to, overlapping responsibilities as we do that. So once you're elected to the council, or even before when you're considering it, what are you responsible for? What do you do with respect to governance?
Basically, the council is, we're the legislative body of the council. We can actually do ordinances, we can change law, we do the tax rate, we can lower or raise the tax rate. I'm sure the people would love to hear that, if we can lower the tax rate, but that's almost unheard of nowadays. But what we do, we govern the city, how it is run, and the entity for the budget and everything.
And when you talk about the budget, that would be, I assume, one of the major things that you have to do.
One of the major things at the end of the year or the beginning of the year is we always scan the budget, how much money we have to work at, so we can do our projects we like to do, because you can either go through grants to get money, or you can go through your taxing revenues to fix things, because as a city it's in constant flux. It's like your home. You want to keep your home nice, but we like to keep the city nice, but there's so much money to go around, so you do priorities.
Mm-hmm. As I was talking with the mayor, you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want.
That's right.
You got to make choices. As you look at those, what would be some of the most significant things that are done with respect to the budget, just for the sake of people knowing what are some of the major items that impact the budget?
Major items on the budget are, as like we've been told since we become in office, that is our safety of our city, our first responders, which is your police and your fire department. That takes the most part of the money to be safe, to have a police officer. We are blessed in Beech Grove. If you pick up the phone and dial 911, they'll be there within 1 or 2 minutes. Mm-hmm. Fire department, the same way. We're very fortunate. If you're an older person and let's say you have a heart problem, you can pick up the phone in Beech Grove and they're going to respond very quickly, which is the nice part about living in a small town of Beech Grove, because it's small enough to everybody can get there in a reasonable amount of time. And
that's exactly what one of the people responded when we asked the questions on the street. What do you like about Beech Grove? That was exactly what one of the people said, that we put on. What are some of the other things in the budget past that for which the council is responsible?
The council is responsible for the street department, the people that pick up your trash, the people pick up your leaves, the snow removal. They're a very vital part of the city. Find that out, get your first big snowfall and your plows don't get down the street, you'll find out real quick how well you're doing, because they will let you know real quick. You'll get a phone call.
Been said that suburb of Indianapolis of ours, that if you don't do the snow there, you get replaced immediately.
Pretty much. Just, but Beech Grove is funny, because in the old days and even now, if you have a snowfall, you know where the border lines of Beech Grove are because they're clean. You get to Indianapolis, that's when it picks up. Not knocking Indianapolis because they're a larger city, but we are blessed with Beech Grove of having a great city department that takes care of that.
Okay. Anything else, and we're doing that broad brush as I say, anything else that as a first pass citizens ought to know about the city council? Something that's important about it, something it does, something it doesn't do?
Okay, one of the main things that we done too when we were elected as a city council, we looked at our sewer department. State law requires you to run a balanced budget in our sewer department, which we decided to take that very seriously. Mm-hmm. And we were very unpopular at first because we had to raise the sewer rates to take care of the failing sewer system. Like I said, go back to your home. If you want to keep it nice, you're going to have to call a plumber now and then. So what we've done as a council, we raised the sewer bills to be more in line to what it should be to take care of stuff. And we passed a bond issue, I believe it's $1.9 million to hire someone to go down and actually look at the sewer system and take care of it. Which was, we took some hits for that, but if you look now, there's a lot less calls to our street department with the failure. I think the first month in office, we had 9 sewer collapses. So we had to, that was a priority. We had to go in there and look at that, and we took care of it. And right now we're reaping the benefits of that because we're getting a lot less calls.
Okay. City Council meets first Monday?
First Monday of every month.
And as I've said, the purpose of this program is to inform, and it's also to challenge. How many people actually come to City Council meetings, seem to pay attention to what's going on?
Well, like I think we talked about before, Butch, it seems like near an election year or when there's something in the paper, more people will show up. And it's nice to look out there and see people, because these are your people that live next to you down the street and that show a real interest. We have our regulars, our people that come and want to ask us questions, and we appreciate that because we get to see them face to face. There's difference on the phone. We don't get the body language or the English. You can see if they're really sincere, and we try to help them out. So the more people that come to the council meeting, we appreciate that because we can look at the people and see what they mean. And sometimes I have left the council meeting and went right to the person's street and said, well, here's your problem. This is where the truck turns around, and we'd like to take care of that. So it could be a matter of getting signage, telling the street department we need a sign here, a turnaround. Recently, one of the things we made for years, Central Elementary right there by the library on 10th Street was not a school zone. It was on Albany, but it wasn't on Main Street, so we had that checked. Because something about a school zone, most people will slow down for a school zone. They said, well, since Main Street is 25, they'll go ahead and do it. I said, well, about that big sign, people will slow down. And this, you can get a ticket there. But just items like that, they might be small and mundane. We don't think much about them, but that's part of the thing the city government does.
Okay. And we're going to have to cut this off, unfortunately, because again, it's only a half-hour show. We'll come back to the City Council in the future, do a more in-depth, but that gives us a little bit of an overview as to what the City Council does. Again, their meetings are the first Monday of every month. Come out to a City Council meeting, your first challenge for the show. Come out and support, talk about the things that are important to you so that your City Council can do the job for you. If you can't come out on Monday nights, and I know many people can't, the show is broadcast, or the council meeting is broadcast on BGTV. Make sure you turn in. Joe, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Butch.
Greatly appreciate it. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Joe Prindle for coming in today, taking some time away from his schedule to talk with us about the City Council. And I'd like to kind of stop the program at this point to talk about the significance of that. As I said in the first program, this show is to inform and to challenge you. And the information that he gave, even in a short period of time, we could probably spend a couple programs talking about. And in fact, we'll come back to the City Council in future programs. But just the beginnings of, and we want to scratch the surface on topics to give you an idea of how city government works. The first couple of things that I'd pick out of what Mr. Prindle said today is the idea of representation. And we talk about that when we talk about classes about governance, that we are in a representative society. When I talked about my granddad sitting around the kitchen table with the farmers from around the area deciding how they're going to bale hay for the fall, they could do that. But actually only for a while, because even in my time, as another farmer moved into the area, joined that group of people, they had to go to the living room because the kitchen table wasn't big enough. So we get into that kind of thing where we still go to the cafes to make those decisions. We had town hall meetings at a point in time of our history. And the town hall meetings were wonderful, but again, you could get everybody in the town hall. We now have about 15,000 citizens in Beech Grove. You can't get all those people in any of the facilities here in Beech Grove. There's just nowhere big enough. So we have a representation. Mr. Prindle is one of 7 council members. 7 council members and the mayor, 8 people to represent 15,000 people. Now, if you stop and think about that, the 5 council members that are elected from the districts, the areas that we have, if it's a perfect split, each one of those would represent about 3,000 people. Well, it's not a perfect split. Some areas of the city are a little more populated, but let's just work with that as a nice ballpark. A council member represents 3,000 people. Back to what Mr. Prindle said, the council sets the budget, provides for public safety, and that's a part of also setting priorities. The mayor talked about that also. Setting priorities. What are the priorities? What are your priorities? Not what are the council's priorities. The council's priorities should be our priorities, but do they know what your priorities are? It's important to stop and think about that. Have you told your council member what's important to you? What's important to you may be downtown revitalization. What's important to your neighbor may be beautification. What's important to your neighbor on the other side may be the school corporation, what the schools are doing. To another person, it's something else. 3,000 people, the council members can only represent what they know. Does your council member know what you believe is a priority? What should be a priority? So it's important to recognize we're in that representative structure. That's a critical part of what we do. And I can't stress enough that idea of going from being able to meet face-to-face to getting too large to meet face-to-face to going to representation. Your council member can only represent what he or she knows we want, our council members. So the challenge part of this, the thing to do, tell your council member what you want. Call or email. If you don't know who your council member is, you don't know a phone number, don't have the email, go to the beechgrove.com website, find that, call City Hall and ask. But go find out who your city council member is, and then let that person know what are your priorities. Now, you may not get everything you want. Welcome to governance. Again, you may want one thing and a neighbor on one side wants another, a neighbor on the other side wants something else. That's the way the governance works. But unless the council member knows what your priorities are, your priorities won't be represented. So call your council member. Call and email also the two council members at large. One of our checks and balances in the system, and we have lots of them. The checks and balances exist so that, let's say one council member works harder, his or her area doesn't get more because there are the two council members at large to say, now wait a minute, we need to spread this budget out through the whole city. We need to make sure everything works. So call your council member, your challenge for a part of the program. Let that person know what you want, and also let the council members at large know. The other thing I would say is let them know in advance. Go to a council meeting. Don't go to a council meeting just because you've got a problem. Now, go to a council meeting if you have a problem, let them know, but go to the council meeting before there's a problem. Things are done in cycles. How many of you are having a little trouble making ends meet because gas went up as quickly as it did? That's pretty much most of us. We had to reshuffle the budget. And you may have 2 or 3 or 4 cars in your family. You may have more. Well, figure the police cars, figure the ambulances, figure the fire trucks, and gas prices went up for all those. Our council has to do these things in advance. They have to take the time to prepare. They need to know what you want on that list. What are your priorities? So take the time. Go to a council meeting. Now, I also know, and you're going to hear me say this, that in fact, everybody can't go to the council meetings. We wouldn't want to try to get everybody to a council meeting. Again, 15,000 people trying to get into a small room wouldn't work. But pick out a council meeting and go. If you can't go, if your schedule doesn't permit you to go, that's why we have BGTV. The council meetings will be run on BGTV. Take the time to watch one of the meetings. Take the time to watch several of the meetings. Find out what the priorities are, and then let your council members know what are the priorities you want to be. Get your neighbors involved. Let them call. You can't represent them. They have to represent themselves. Give them a nudge. If you're calling your council members, nudge your neighbors. Tell them to show up. But for the first part of the program, again, talking about the city council, the idea is involvement, getting involved. So when are you going to call your council member? Okay, that first segment we talked about elected representation. What I'd like to do now is a little gear shift and talk about boards. Many tasks, much of the work that's done in a government is done by boards, not elected people, people who are appointed, who volunteer to do work. And as a representative of those boards, we're going to talk about the library board today. Take a look at that. So to do that, we want to go to the library, introduce you to Mrs. Diane Burns, who's director of the library, to tell you about the library board.
Are you ready? Okay.
Welcome to the library. I'm glad that you could come and visit us today. My name's Diane Burns, and I'm the library director. I've been here for 35 years. I have to laugh and say I've just about got this job down. We are having a great summer here at the library, and I know you want to talk today about how the library is governed by the Library Board of Trustees. There is a 7-member Board of Trustees. 3 are appointed from the Beech Grove schools, 1 from the Mayor of Beech Grove, 1 from the Mayor of Indianapolis, 1 from the Beech Grove Council, and 1 from the Indianapolis City County Council. So that constitutes our 7-member board. Their terms are for 4 years, and you can be appointed 4 different times, serving a total of 16 years. In fact, the president of the board now, Larry States, next year will be ending his 16-year term limit, so he'll have to leave the board, so there will be an opening then. And the way that's handled is that appointment will come from the school board. So the library board will meet and discuss needing a new trustee. We'll talk about what skills and interests we might like to see in a new trustee. It's a good idea, I think, to have the most successful board. Really brings together people with lots of different traits. We like to have some retired people on the board, some younger members that still have children in school and are interested in programs. It's a mix of men and women. It's always interesting to have different professions with different expertise with computers or law, construction, whatever that might be, so that between among the 7 of them, they can answer a lot of the questions that come up in running the library. They do have 3 main duties. Their main 3 responsibilities are, number 1, organizing the budget. That starts every summer, which is going on now, looking at where we are now in our funding, which is, of course, a difficult year with everything happening with the property tax reassessment. Then we'll meet, and it's kind of an 18-month budget, looking at how much money we need to run the rest of this year and then all of 2008. And through a series of meetings, come together and propose a budget, and then it goes through kind of a budgeting process through the state and eventually will be adopted. So that's their number 1 function. And I would say number 2 would be coming up with all the policies we need to run the library. Those are employment policies and then other sorts of library policies, including things like when we open, when we close, holidays, our computers, what the fines are, all sorts of things, using our meeting room, just lots of things. So the 3rd function comes down to then hiring someone, myself in this case, to administer the budget as it was presented and adopted and the policies as they were formulated. So that's really what I do here at the library.
Great. Well, thank you very much for taking the time to let the citizens know what the library board does and how it helps govern in the city of Beech Grove. I'd like to remind the viewers that you can learn more about the library by going to the library website, find out about those hours, times that that the library is open, and the programs that the library has. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Enjoy it. Come and see us this summer.
First of all, for those of you out there, I want to say thanks to Mrs. Burns for taking the time from her schedule today to tell us about the library board. And that's something that, again, is very significant because a lot of the work is done through boards. Now, some of the boards are much as Mrs. Burns presented. They're actually volunteers. They're people who have been given the position by a variety of entities. And that's something that's important too, because we talk about a system of checks and balances. It's the Beech Grove Public Library, but not everybody is appointed by Beech Grove entities. The mayor has an appointment to the library board, but the mayor of Indianapolis also makes an appointment to the library board. The city council of Indianapolis makes an appointment to the library board. So it's important to recognize that at our level of government, there are other entities out there that influence how things are done. And on the surface, that's a little confusing. It's, okay, well, why should somebody outside of Beech Grove make an appointment to the Beech Grove Library Board? Well, that's the system of checks and balances that we study when we talk about governance. So that, you know, down here in Beech Grove, we don't go out and do something really bad at the library. Not that we would, but it's that system of checks and balances. Now, boards are very important, and we'll talk in the next show, actually, we'll talk to the president of the Board of Education for Beech Grove, and those are elected positions. So some boards are elected, and some boards are appointed, but boards do a lot of the business of the city. So, what does that mean to you? Everybody can't be on a board. We don't have 15,000 board slots, but you don't need to be a board member. But if you're concerned about the library, find out who the library board members are. If you're concerned about the parks, you can find out who the parks board members are. And again, give them your contact information. Let them know that you're interested. Let them know if you have ideas. The challenge, get up and do something, volunteer. Contact the library, contact the parks board. Now everybody can't do this all at once or they'll be swamped, but sit back for a little bit and think first, what could you contribute? It doesn't have to be an enormous amount of time. You don't have to be a board member to make the board better, but what are the little things that you could do? Let's take the library board. Can you present a program? You might want to propose a program to the library. I can do this. You can volunteer at the library. Even the job of reshelving books sounds like a menial task, but if you've ever gone to the library and couldn't find the book you wanted, you understand it's important to reshelve books and to reshelve them correctly. That takes time and it takes energy. It's not particularly a glamorous task, but it's a necessary task. But you can volunteer with some of the boards. Contact and offer. Hey, I've got some time. I've got this much time. Could you use me? You won't always find matches. You won't always find good matches. But if you don't go looking, you'll never find any. You can, at the library has book sales several times a year. You can join the Friends of the Library, become a member of that organization, an affiliate organization, and help sit at the book sales. I've done that. It's great fun. Not the most exciting thing in the world, but you get to talk to and meet a lot of people, which for me is very great. You can go through your bookshelves. How many of you have books at home that you're not using and not going to use? Box them up, bring them to the library, say, hey, here's a donation for the book sale. That money helps provide programs at the library. You don't have to do a lot, but do a little. So, what are you going to do? Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of this show. We've talked about representative government. We've talked about boards, appointed people, elected boards as we do that. It starts becoming one of those, the more you know, the more you realize there is to know. It's one of those things. I asked Diane Burns at the library for what board responsibilities in doing my homework. It's what do we have? She gave me a folder of laws, and you start reading through thinking, if I had 8 months, I might understand all these laws and how they interact. There's a lot of work that's done behind the scenes, but you can be a part of the work that's done. Get up, call your email, whatever, your council representative, look at the boards that exist in town, where can you be a part of them, and even if you don't have time to work, that's fine, become knowledgeable. Because remember, the name of the show is In the Know, in the Grove.